Roger Williams University is hosting a crisis management seminar on May 3rd at their Providence campus. Crises, whether a natural disaster, cyber attack, or financial instability, can have severe repercussions if not handled properly. This is where crisis management plays a pivotal role. Join Roger Williams MBA students and expert speakers to learn how to prepare for the unexpected. The program is totally free and open to the public. You can register online at rwu.edu/events/crisis-management-symposium.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
The legalization of recreational cannabis that went into effect last year can open doors for your career. If you are already in the industry or wondering what is the best path to break into the cannabis field, well, the University of Rhode Island has a program to help you become highly competitive in numerous areas of the cannabis industry. Fully accredited by URI's College of Pharmacy, the certificate program is 100% online, and it can be completed in 2 semesters. The next application deadline for the summer 2023 session is April 4th, and courses start on May 9th. You can learn more at uri.edu/online/cannabis or give them a call at 401-874-5280. Today we're looking at really arguably an institution here in Rhode Island, and that's Duffy and Shanley. And I read from Business Wire where Duffy and Shanley celebrates 50 years in business. Providence-born agency Duffy and Shanley marks 50 years today as a creative, collaborative, and integrated communications company. Founded by Dave Duffy as D.A. Duffy and Company in 1973, the agency was one of more than 40 in the state. Duffy and Shanley has evolved and innovated to remain relevant and successful today. One of just 2 agencies in Rhode Island that has stood the test of time since the 1970s. So that in and of itself is a pretty interesting metric. And that indicates that there's an institutional knowledge and basis, but then there's also, of course, that willingness to be evolving and ahead of the curve, so to speak. So we welcome Jon Duffy and Annette Maggiacomo, who will kind of walk us down memory lane and also talk about where we are today in terms of the state of Rhode Island and just the ecosystem that that permeates both some of your clients in the business sector, but then also in the public sector. So thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, Bill. It's great to be with you.
Talk about 50 years of anything, because that's highly impressive.
Right. Well, particularly in a professional service firm where your inventory goes home every night, our people are everything. So that's what makes it really impressive. We don't make things that, you just keep continuing to make and innovate, so it's all about people. So that's what's, I think, really impressive, and we're excited about it. And as you mentioned, we're only one of 2 left from the early 70s when there were when the agency business was thriving in Rhode Island, and there were many reasons for its demise of the industry in Rhode Island. And Rhode Island's doing fine. I mean, we've got some nice friends and competitors still, but not like it was in the early 70s when there was over 40 thriving shops employing over 1,000 people. It's not like that anymore.
It reminds me of news where you hear about, the Providence Journal back in the 70s, or, back when WHJJ was quite frankly relevant, and there were 2 talk radio stations. And I always hear these war stories of, competing with people across the street or within your building. And it's evolved. It's different. There's less, but the impact of the existing firms is enormous. And then you have a lot of smaller scale players that sort of make up this new ecosystem. So, with that in mind, talking about today and talking about staying ahead of, sometimes one person operations, what is it that has allowed you to evolve and continue to be, frankly, dominant in this sector, even as the sector itself has shifted so dramatically as you just described?
I'm going to let Annette take a lot of this because her group's really thrived in this area, but it's been the transformation of the digital age, Bill. It's been as traditional media has struggled and the internet has changed everything. We found the internet to be very democratic. Back early in our careers, you had to be in New York, you had to be in LA to have big national clients. You had to. That's where the media was based, right? So the fact that that changed and allowed a scrappy agency from Providence to play on a national level was a game changer, while also seeing the traditional media you mentioned earlier suffer. It allowed agencies that were looking forward, that were scrappy, that were willing to try anything, to really gain an advantage in the marketplace, because we had to try things differently to get attention. And Annette's group, our consumer PR group, really thrived during that time and has grown very, very rapidly since. So now, why don't you talk about?
Bill, I think they say the best day at Duffy, one of the best days at Duffy, was the fact that Jon and I actually started on the same day back in 1997. And I think I say that for a few reasons. One, as we entered into like the 2000s and the turn of like the century, we started to, one of our first clients on my side, which we refer to as the consumer PR group, was the largest juvenile products manufacturer in the world. And that came to us from a relationship that I had with a previous colleague. And, we started to work and launch this national baby product. And I think it was the start of who we kind of become over the last 23 years, which is a very competitive, nationally thought of firm. I mean, we compete with the best of the best. We realized then that, okay, let's build a great team, which I am, to Jon's point, our people are our product, and our people and the ability to get great people in Rhode Island has been great to us. And I think that without people that have been part of this team, new and old, it's allowed us to get the caliber of client outside of Rhode Island. Like, people in Rhode Island, I think sometimes don't understand and or know the breadth and depth of our client base and some of the amazing things that we're doing, starting from what Dave started in 1973. And I think we had this great foundation and knew that, hey, like, don't refer to us as this little Providence shop. We used to have clients in like the 2000s that would say, Annette, where are you based? And we would say, we're in Providence. We always just say, we're 3 hours from New York.
Yeah.
And I think you don't have to say that now, you don't. And I think the world did change and we became, there's not as many borders. But listen, our work product also had to be great, because if it wasn't, we wouldn't have survived or grown the way that we have in the last 23 years. Because we all know we're in a very competitive industry. We are still considered a, quote, boutique firm. I'm up against world global conglomerates with agencies in, 27 countries or whatever. And so it's something that I really feel passionate about and really proud that we've been able to grow and build and stay in Rhode Island. We all love Rhode Island. I think we always like to say that it's the best place to build a business. And it really is. We all have a great work-life balance. We all work hard and we get to work on some of the best brands in the business. So,
yeah. And I wonder if that nimbleness, what role that plays as well, because one of my first jobs when I was in New York was, quite frankly, I was in an administrative assistant type role, but it was at Digitas, which was acquired by Publicis Group during my time there.
Oh yeah.
And it was a
we
situation
compete with them all the time.
Totally. But there's a situation where you go into a building, there's like, I don't know, 10,000 floors. And even within a floor, people don't know who each other are. And there's always like, who are you? And, oh, you run this team. Well, that's interesting. And one hand doesn't always wash the other. Whereas when you think of a nimble operation, not necessarily small, but like you said, boutique, sometimes the brainstorm, the creative energy can flow in a more of an uninterrupted and sometimes uplifting manner, because ideas tend to bounce off of other ideas, almost like a particle simulator in a way.
Yeah, very true. This is why, Bill, I want everybody in my office. I want everybody's faces together, because in our industry, you just hit it on that is so important. We are the CEO at one of my favorite clients, I'm not going to say who, said, we're surviving through COVID, but we're not thriving because of the continuity that we need to be like together. Because listen, we build ideas. Like, it's our idea that we always say the best idea wins. That's kind of our Duffy. That's always something that we've lived by and we believe in, and you've got to be together and collaborative. Our space here in Providence is awesome for that too. We have great open collaborative space to encourage just that. It's what it's really important to us.
That's a really interesting sort of sidebar that we'll have to revisit in depth, is the argument over work from home, hybrid, in person, what's the right balance? But you're right. I mean, there's certain things, definitely creative spaces of any kind, that you can't get it done only via Zoom or, some kind of phone call.
It just takes longer. Yeah. Like somebody last week, the Today Show calls us. The Today Show wants something like in the next morning, and they want an answer when they have you on the phone. And sometimes we don't have an answer immediately that, we have to talk to 2 or 3 of the other team members about samples or products or where is it available, whatever the case may be. That would be like 5 phone calls or emails versus like talking to somebody, in the next office. So it's important for us. And, everybody's in a hurry.
Well, that's for sure.
Nobody likes to wait.
I agree with that. Let's go down memory lane. Your favorite moment, if there is one. I mean, that's like when you're talking about 50 years, obviously in your cases from 1997, do the math, about 25.
I have one that's awesome
let's hear it.
It was from 2009. It was a furniture company based out of Chicago called Sagas International. And the CEO was a colleague of mine from another, role. And he wanted to just do more than sell furniture. And he was like, Annette, we really want to make a difference. And how do we become a company that can do more than just sell classroom furniture? And I was on a plane coming back from Chicago, and there was an article in People magazine about a South Carolina school that was just demolished it was either a hurricane, I can't remember. There was a natural disaster that like just killed this very poor school in a very tough community in South Carolina. And I called him when I landed, and I'll never forget this. And I was like, Daryl, we should go in and you should completely rebuild and fix this school, because you have the resources to do it. And you say you want to do more than just sell classroom furniture. Here's your opportunity to really put your words to work. And in one weekend, he put in $250,000 and they rebuilt Martin Junior High School in South Carolina. And it was really, think about 2009, right? It was really a time when maybe there wasn't as much collaboration between public and private. And, he had worked with the Department of Education on a federal level with some other things. He was really trying to be a really good corporation. And it was one of the highlights of my career, because when we rebuilt that school and saw those kids' faces, and, President Obama got involved and recognized the work. Arnie Duncan, who was the head of education, recognized the work. And I just felt like, wow, like my PR idea, in some respects, really changed these kids' lives. And I think that I always try to encourage my clients to not just say these great things, but take action. And I think it was one of the highlights of my career. And we won a bunch of awards for the work. And it was just, we mobilized really fast and just did it. And it was great. It was great.
Really cool.
So I have 2, if I'm allowed, Bill.
Please.
One is way back. So my father was close friends with Dave Gavitt, who's coach of Providence College, and had this vision for a larger college basketball entity in the East. And through a lot of brainstorming together, they started the Big East, and Duffy and Shanley named the Big East, did all the original marketing, but most importantly, used our advertising agency capabilities to look at it like a marketing project and say, okay, what are the best TV markets that's going to help us get a TV contract? And that's how schools were picked. it wasn't because the schools were great at basketball. It's they were located in a major metropolitan area. And based on that, my father, Mike Tranghese, went to ESPN and did the first TV deal, and it took off, right? So that's always one of my favorite ones because, you know, it's a great merger of passions of college basketball and marketing that really made that thing successful.
Yeah,
and
it still is to this day.
Still is great.
It's a powerhouse, and there's no question about it. And it's interesting you say that in terms of the major markets. I mean, you look at Holy Cross, and it's like, well, they're in Worcester, and is that a major market? You know, good
Worse
question.
than that, they said no, Bill. They were invited. They said no.
Oops.
But, you know, like Seton Hall, which was a small school, brought New York, right? So like things like that. Villanova brought Philadelphia. And Georgetown brought Washington, D.C. That's how that league was thought about, which was really interesting because it's a fascinating marketing and basketball success story. Big East was headquartered in our offices for the first couple of years of their life. So that's always been one of my favorite stories and important to us. And then another one, just personally, Nike Golf, when they launched, they were looking for a PR agency to help them out, and they hired us. And the whole country was like, who? You know, because everybody thought they'd go to a big, huge agency. They're Nike Golf. They had Tiger Woods. And we got the call based on we had worked with ESPN and the X Games as they launched in Providence and kept working with them as they grew. And one of their executives went to Nike Golf, and he was like, yeah, we need these Duffy guys to help us launch this thing. And that's always a good feeling, right? That gives you a sense that you've kind of made it, right? That you're getting out of just being thought of as this little Rhode Island agency when Nike calls and says, hey, we got this Tiger Woods guy and we're going to make a run at golf. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Swoosh 18 was born, and the rest is history.
The rest is history. Yes.
And it shows right there the power of connections. And a lot of people hear that term and they think of backroom deals, or they think of something that's unpleasant. But really, it's when you work on something and you forge relationships that are professional, personal, and if they're successful concepts, and frankly, the pipeline is easy to access, why wouldn't you go back to why wouldn't ESPN through the X Games, which are here in Providence, people going down College Hill on the street luge and all of that. Why wouldn't that morph into something? There's no reason not to. And I think it's a really good lesson for Providence-based firms or Rhode Island-based firms that are trying to compete on the national stage. It's like once you forge that connection and you're patient, it can morph into something that is as huge. And especially at that point in time, Nike Golf became a dominant post Jordan. And that was the next step in that humongous global brand.
Right.
I think it's how you do good work, and your reputation is built on, it's less about where our physical offices are, and it's more about what is the work product that's coming out of your team. And so the lines get blurred and your reputation gets built. And it's something that we hold really in great regard, because it's been a lot of years of building that relationship and working with people that have gone. Like, I mean, it was fun. You know, our Jarrell Juvenile client was with us for over 10 years. And then somebody went to Staples, and we worked with Staples for 11 years. And then they went and they're at, you know, the next company, and we work with them for 10 years. Like, it's just, you know, it's doing good work with good people. And I think Dave, it's funny, Jon, like when you talk to Dave Duffy, it's what kind of started the business, right? It was his good people around him that gave him opportunities to start Duffy. And without that, where would we be? I don't know.
One other aspect of your business that's been very successful is your public sector work. And public sector communications has really changed in a lot of ways. And some people from the journalistic side look at it almost negatively. They say, well, if you want to make money, you got to like leave your job at the Providence Journal or something like that and go work in communications, whether it be for the state or for an agency. But, you know, that's kind of always been there as well. It's not like this was born in 2015, the notion that the public information officer for the public sector. That, I mean, that's an old idea and it's an old concept, but you've been a part of that and you've evolved with it. What's the state of public information in Rhode Island right now?
Interesting. And that's funny because that's where a lot of people know Duffy and Shanley, right? From the work we do there. And actually it's probably between 10 and 15% of our work. So, but we get that. That's why people know us here. I think what changed everything there is social media, where you used to get a call from a journalist working on a story. Nobody else was working on it. So the communications agencies, the state agencies team had time to work on it and get it going. But now you get a call and the reporter wants to tweet right away what they have, right? Even though I think a lot of times the state agencies haven't had time to do all the investigative work to answer the question fully. But, everything's just sped up because of that. And because of that, I think you're finding more and larger communication teams at state agencies, which people get frustrated by. But as you know, being in the business, you guys are racing each other, right? You've got to get a story out as quick as possible. You probably haven't researched it as much as you'd like to, but you got to go. And that pressure to respond quickly on both ends has really changed how government and public employees have to respond, and it's never quick enough. It's just changed the game. It's frankly for the worse. Just because I don't think journalists are allowed to do as great a job as they'd like from a time perspective, and the state agencies aren't in a position to get all the answers that they'd probably like to get to give a full report on the story. So that's my take on it. So because of that, I think it's in a really crazy place that moves much too quickly and leads to distrust.
Really interesting. Couple more questions here and appreciate your time again, and happy 50th anniversary to Duffy and Shanley. So when we think about outlets right now and means of communicating, there's direct messaging, of course, through email blasts, in-person conferences, just the straight up phone calls and all of that. But in terms of mass media, we've got, of course, print, digital, print for lack of a better term. So call it, your bostonglobe.com. You've got connected TV, traditional television, you've got social media, you've got radio, you've got podcasts. There's probably something else coming that we don't think of right now that'll be here, whether AI is involved in that or whatever it is, something's coming along. How do you assess as an agency the best methods to deploy, a message, or I should say where to deploy it based on the situation at hand? How do you assess that? How do you look at the portfolio of products, for lack of a better term, and figure out, how do I get this message across?
Yeah, it's who's the client, who's the consumer we're trying to reach, and then what's the best method to do that based on who the consumer is. But also key to this is PR firms, or speaking from a PR perspective with media, you can't assume that one type of media is going to be able to take the same message. So how are we communicating our message digitally? How are we working with print that no longer exists? And there's so few of them, but they're the ones that are there are important. What podcasts are important? You know what it comes down to? It comes down to being able to make sure we're telling the story and telling it really well and know how to say it to that certain type of media. And it comes down to, quite frankly, people caring, PR people and my team caring about doing that. And I think that that's why we stand out. We just launched a new line for Hanes called Hanes Originals. And Hanes is over 120 something year old brand. And, they're trying to reach a younger consumer to compete with all these new, Instagram formed brands, so to speak. And it's about, how are we going to reach this young consumer? And so part of my team was just spent 3 days talking to about 50 media outlets all over the country about Hanes showing them the product, talking to them about it. It's about time, I think. You never can replace all of these things in technology. Artificial intelligence is definitely going to impact how we communicate to our consumers, no doubt. No doubt. And we're going to have to be better storytellers and make sure that we're still getting these messages through. But I think it always comes down to people caring and knowing what each media outlet wants and making sure that we're giving them what they want in a very customized way. You can't replace that.
Yeah.
And I think
Bill, your question started in the right direction. When the agency started, there were 3 TV stations, a couple radio stations, and the Providence Journal, right? So it was pretty simple what you had to do. And as media evolved to adding cable, and then what the web and digital has brought us to, even, we're now influencers, which I believe we did the first and biggest influencer program of any agency around back in 2009. But there's a Nielsen type service that tracks influencers and what they're delivering. So the big move now is, if you can't measure it, you're in trouble. So that's like, in your radio world, that's harder today, Bill, right? Because those metrics are still a little soft, right? With Arbitron rankings and things like that, right? So the metrics, so you may have a client that's totally metric driven, and that helps drive what we're going to do. Because if they only want to see activities that can be measured, well, that's what you're going to do, and that's what you're going to drive. That's an objective of the campaign. If you might have some clients that just want big hits, big events, big everything, okay, well, that drives how you think there. But the proliferation of different ways to invest the client's money has just been staggering over the last, it's just growing exponentially.
Yeah, and media is cheap, but like, you're still, radio is still important to us. .com, like, digital properties are important to us. There's still people that create magazines like Cosmo and GQ, and that's really important to us. And local TV stations are really important to us. This year alone, we opened over 13 new clubs for BJ's Wholesale clubs in 13 different states. I mean, local media in those states were really important to us. So it's knowing who you're talking to and how to talk to them, right? You don't want somebody to pitch you, Bill, that doesn't know what you talk about and give you some idea that you're like, why would I cover that? It's not what I do,
Yeah.
And I think we see that a lot in our industry, unfortunately.
Yeah, you just described my inbox right there.
Yes, exactly.
40 or 50 emails a week of,
it's really annoying.
What's going on here? I mean, listen to the show, watch the TV thing. Come on.
No, they just take your info off a Cision report. They see that you have good numbers, and of course you'll want to talk about their product.
But Bill, see what you say, right? See what you say. I say to my team all the time, if you come in our office, you will see every media. We have boxes of magazines so that we're reading. If we want to be in GQ or Cosmo, you better know what we want to be in there for, or else let's not go that route. So it does come down, all this great technology, but that's why I can't stress enough that it comes down to our great team too, that takes the time to do the work. And I think it's easy to say it. It's harder to do it.
What a great educational conversation this has been as well for people out there that want to understand this world at a higher level. All right, quickly, because I know we're up against it here. The Super Bowl was last night. Takeaways from the ads that aired across the world.
Duncan was the best. Nobody was better than Duncan's. Ben
Affleck lives they're a client. Duncan. Bill, we've got to.
I was just going to say, full disclosure here.
We were not involved in that. We can be very, we're separated from it a little bit. We didn't develop the ad spot for them. And I think it's terrific. Ben Affleck is always carrying a Dunkin' coffee. I loved it.
I thought Jennifer Lopez should have asked for a cruller, though, not a glaze.
Exactly.
But the way she asked for it was great.
Yeah, so
and I loved the Amazon ad with the dog, the doggies, and
my quick takeaway was celebrity is back, right? Like, everybody had a celebrity, whether it made sense or not. The John Travolta with the Garden State redo, I'm still not sure I understood that. But everybody had a celebrity, and then the amount of QR codes, which goes to my earlier quote of the statement of measure it, measure everything you can, measure, show me that Super Bowl ad made, a decent ROI, which was not the intent of a Super Bowl ad, right?
I also think Rihanna stole the show with her announcement. So
No, there you go.
Even though she wasn't an ad, she stole the show.
So Bill,
I have one
last tangent, if you'll give me it.
Please.
So as I look back on turning 50, and when you're old, you start thinking about things, right? So I keep thinking about, could it happen again today? A 50-year run of a Providence agency. And what I'm struck by is my father started it. He lost a political race and needed a job. And he knew a guy, a potential client, who said, yes, I'll be your first client. But more importantly, I have this office space that you're going to go in and you're not going to pay me. You're not. Then he went to a bank that he'd known, and they said, yeah, we'll give you a business loan. And he goes, I have no collateral. They said, no worries. We know you. Then he, excuse me. Then he had a designer friend who said, I'll get all your corporate ID stuff done for you. Then he knew Joey Kogan, great printer downtown. He said, I'm going to print everything for you for free. Knew a lawyer in town, said, yep, I'm going to get you set up for free. Don't pay me. So he had this whole village that took care of him, that allowed him to start a business without really worrying about what people worry about. And that instilled in the agency, a culture of giving back. We always joke pro bono's been our largest growing segment of the business for 50 consecutive years. We love, we love giving back that way. But I just wonder, are people still willing or capable of displaying these levels of kindness? Could it happen again today? And you know what? Yes, that's my take. I try to help people out, but that's what really strikes me is if Providence really came together to help launch Duffy and Shanley. And, I just hope our community is still the same. I think it is. I hope it is.
That's really, really, really interesting. And I think it is, but you're right, especially in the wake of COVID, you wonder, where does the selfishness versus selflessness line get blurred? And will someone help you just to help you versus I'll help you, I'll give you this space, but guess what? I expect X, Y, and Z. And
right. I say it's a village, but it's truly an ecosystem, right? And I believe it's still there. And I agree with your COVID point 100%. So I just hope, my lingering thought is, could this level of kindness happen today? And and I hope if anybody takes anything out of this podcast, is there anything they can do to help a small company trying to make it? It matters, and look what it could lead to.
Powerful stuff, Jon, Annette. Really appreciate your time. Congratulations again. And hey, Providence, Rhode Island. It might be the place to be.
It is the place to be. You know that.
Absolutely.
All right, Bill. Thank you. We appreciate you today.
Yeah.
Thanks
Likewise.
for having us. Thank you.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.